Welcome back to The Pulse. Now, it's been nearly a week since polls closed nationwide, yet collation in some constituencies remain incomplete. This afternoon, the NDC's national chairman, Johnson Esedin-Ketia, at a press conference, also denounced or described the ongoing collation at the National Police Training School as a pure illegality. We'll bring you the full press address shortly, but first, let's provide some context to the situation. Now, yesterday, my colleague James Aveji spent the whole day there yesterday and happy to join me in studio in full piece, not in half piece, in full piece, to bring us details of what happened, really. James, really glad to see. I want to touch you right now. See that you're really in full piece, but it's good to see you.
Touch me later on the show.
How you doing?
I'm okay.
Perfect. Now, yesterday, I followed you. We had a conversation on polls, but the whole day, I know that a lot of things changed even after polls. You gave us a report on Newsnight later, but bring us up to speed. What happened really yesterday?
So the collation at the National Police Training School in one of their halls actually started yesterday early in the morning at around 8 a.m., where the four constituencies under serious issues of challenges from the constituencies in the eastern regions were moved by the Electoral Commission to the Greater Accra region for final re-collation. And the four in Sawama Edrejiri constituency is one, Akwetia is one, Fantiakwa North constituency, as well as Suhum constituency. Now, yesterday at about midday, two of the four were sorted out, Akwetia as well as Fantiakwa North constituencies. And in those two, the NPP parliamentary candidate in all of the two emerged winners of those two constituencies. Then was the 10 for Suhum as well as in Sawama Edrejiri constituencies, because they were doing them in pairs. So two goes and then they continue with the rest two. And so the process began, and I started witnessing the process properly from about midday, because Sweetie Abochi actually covered the first half of the day, and then I went for the second half. And so I started with the Suhum as well as Sawama Edrejiri. And so our expectation was that if they can use 4 hours to do the first two, then it is expected that the last two should also be done with pretty quickly. But it took us about 9 hours for one to be concluded, which is Suhum constituency, because just when George started PM business was when I had to break in to do the announcement of the winner for the Suhum constituency. And so there were a lot of issues that came up. For instance, in the Suhum case, there were issues about so what happens is, because of the disturbances that happened in the constituency, some of the pink sheets were destroyed, both those of the political parties as well as the Electoral Commission. So if you see the Electoral Commission's own coalition register, you would realize that where they record the figures of the polling stations, some of the figures of the polling stations are missing. And so the understanding is that if both the political parties have their pink sheets intact and will provide that for the EC to get the data of the polling stations, they would put those two figures, compare those two figures, it matches, then they go ahead to accept it and enter it for those polling stations. Now, if one political party do not have the pink sheet of a particular polling station, the other has, and the Electoral Commission has, they will go ahead to accept it and move on with, provided the political party who has the pink sheet has the hard copy and not the digital. Now, the problem is that the NDC tend to have most of their pink sheets in a hard copy, but the NPP, on the other side, do not have much of it, but tend to have all of it in a digital form. They say that they have scanned the pink sheet from the polling stations, and so they are able to provide all of them in digital form. Now, the NDC has a problem with the digital pink sheets, because they say that if it is digital, they may not be authenticated, and so the trust issues between political parties.
But I would have thought digital rather would be more.
That's the argument of the other parties who have the digital. But they say that they can't trust the digital, especially if it is tempered with in any way. And so they want to go with the hard copy. And so if they have the hard copy, the NPP doesn't have the hard copy, but the EC has figures, the EC should accept theirs and then they collate the results. But if they do not have the hard copy and the NPP has the digital copies, they cannot accept it, and so it should be flagged and should be step aside. That's why the NPP also has a problem, that if you do not have and we have a digital print, why do you prevent us from admitting ours for the EC to use? And then the counter accusations about, so if a figure is mentioned for a particular polling station, and the NPP will tell you that if the NDC sees that they are losing that polling station, then they tend to say they do not have the pink sheet for that polling station, and so the EC shouldn't admit. The NDC will also raise the same allegation against the NPP that if a polling station doesn't go in their favor, they tend to object that they do not have that particular polling station. And so, and then it will degenerate into arguments. You did this, we accepted. Why didn't you accept it? If that is the case.
The EC representative over there was doing what? That
is the problem. And so the political parties, if it is going in one person's favor, you see the other person accusing the EC, urging them to do their job, stand their ground, and take a decision on the matter. Meanwhile, they will take long period of time to argue among themselves before the EC will now come to take a final decision on the case. Sometimes, even if the EC takes a decision, one side or the other disagrees with the EC, leads into another long haul of disagreement and chaos, pushing and pulling and all of that before they finally settle in about 20-30 minutes before the process continues. And so that's how it has been. A few minutes of calm and then long hours of tension, few minutes of calm and long hours of tension before finally a particular polling station constituency will be dealt with and then the results declared. So that's how we've been dilly-dallying through the whole of yesterday. And then at 9 o'clock, we had the Suhum constituency being declared.
Also in favor of the NPP?
Also in favor of the NPP's Frank Esedu Bekwe, who had, I'll get the figures, but he won that with a slim margin because there was an independent candidate in the race who polled so much vote as far as that particular constituency is concerned. And so that was done, the collation was completed as at 7 p.m. But there were issues from all sides.
7 to the 9.
Yes,
the time
2 hours. They went on a break for more than an hour, and then they came back to get themselves into another round of argument for almost an hour until the police insisted that enough is enough, and so the final result should be collated. And so if you watch that declaration on TV, you realize that the police had actually formed wall around the returning,
some sort of a barricade.
Exactly, around the returning officer to give them the sanctity to enter the figures. And you see that only the NPP candidate actually endorsed the figure on the final coalition sheet.
On this note, did the NDC accept the
NDC didn't accept because they were still raising. So Suhum had some 6 other polling stations to be dealt with. 5 of them had issues of overvoting. And then one, they said the biometric verification devices number wasn't recorded on that particular pink sheet.
Hang on. So as of yesterday, 9 p.m., the Suhum seat had been declared in favor of the NPP.
Of the NPP.
Despite some constituencies, some
6 polling stations. Results not be exactly.
So they declared without that.
Without the 6
EC
polling stations.
that even if we added these polling stations numbers, it will not affect the results in any way.
That's
there clarity on that?
That's the understanding of the EC, the position of the EC. But for the independent candidates and others who think that they are closer to the winning number, they were insisting that all 6 must be dealt with, because these are the figures. The NPP candidate had 16,855 votes.
Okay.
The NDC candidate had 15,259 votes. Then an independent candidate, Kojo Asante, had 14,860 votes. That's how close it has been. 16,000. I'm told he's an independent candidate, but I don't know his full background. 16,000, 15,000, 14,000. So they believe that for NDC and the independent candidate, they believe that if those 6 polling stations should be dealt with, it should significantly affect the final result, for which reason they were insisting that it needed to also be compiled before the results are declared. So
as of yesterday, we're quite certain that on the side of the EC, out of the disputed constituencies results from the Eastern region, we have 3 resolved out of the 4 from the Eastern region. As of yesterday, 9 p.m.
9 p.m.
I understand that you put a report together about that.
Exactly. So this I did this at about 1 a.m. before we left the place. That was when it was suspended to this morning. We can catch a glimpse of that wrap of what transpired yesterday.
Long hours, the Electoral Commission has been re-collating the election result for Nsawam Eduejiri, Akwetia, Suhum, and Fantiakwa North constituencies. 3 of the constituencies have been resolved, but of course not without chaotic scenes.
Leave our section. With due respect, you are not part of us. You are not part of us. You are not supposed to be here. Go away.
After the NPP won Akwetia and Fantiakwa North constituencies in the early hours of Thursday, it took the EC returning officer 12 more hours to declare the Suhum constituency results at 9 p.m. and under heavy police protection.
I hereby declare Frank Asiadu Bakwen as MP-elect for Suhum constituency 2024 election.
Here's Majority Leader Alexander Penyumakin's reaction to a 3rd victory.
We thank God that when security was properly provided and the EC was firm, we've all seen transparently what we have achieved.
But the NDC's Peter Boama Otokuno says they will not accept the results of Akwetia.
When she called that they should stop, they had finished and they claimed they have declared. And that results declaration is illegal, it's unfounded, it's non-existent, and so the Akwetia is still outstanding.
It's past 1 a.m. here at the Collation Center. And the EC, together with the political parties, are still divided on whether to accept the results from over 80 polling stations in the Nsawam Eduejiri constituency, which have some errors. Frank Dompre, who is the MP and candidate in the election, is furious but firm he will win the seat.
See, I see something happening. People have pin sheet and yet they hold on to it and say, I don't have, just to prolong the declaration of the result. This is most unfortunate. I have won this election. Why are they dragging the matter? What is this?
After the long wait, the EC has postponed its final decision on Nsawam Eduejiri to 6 a.m. Friday morning. James Savaji, Police Training School, Accra.
Well, so that's how it ended yesterday at the Tesano Police Training Center, where my colleague Avaji has been bringing us updates. Now, today is another day, and it's day 2 of the collation of results at the exact same place. Now, a little later, we shall bring you how it happened in the morning, but my colleague Jacqueline Osumayebwa is on ground now and is connecting with me to bring us updates on what's happening there currently. Jacqueline, if you can hear me.
Yes, MFI, I can hear you. I mean, we've been here since morning. We've been waiting on the EC to collate the results for the Nsawam Eduejiri constituency. And it's not only that, we have 4 other constituencies. That's Ahafo and North constituency, Ahafo and North Southwest constituency, Techiman South, and Obuasi East constituency. What happened earlier was there was chaos here, but then it was resolved and everything was put on hold according to the NDC. They are saying that they have applied for an injunction to halt this process. But then I'm here with Frank Dompre and Honorable. How has the whole situation been so far for you?
Well, it's part of life. To serve the public, you should be prepared and ready to go through things like this because you are seeking to get the mandate of the people. I think it's cool. It's the first time I'm going through such an experience. Tomorrow will be a week since we had elections and still the results have not been called. It's not good enough. And if you look at happenings between the parties and the EC, one can say that it's a self-inflicted wound, because the CI gives the EC the mandate to give copies of results to the parties, and then the EC has the original copy. Yeah. So if the EC produces the pink sheet, it is reasonably expected that the parties will have copies which was prior given to the parties. But so if one party says, I don't have a copy, it will not nullify the mandate given to the EC to call the results. Unfortunately, the NDC, that has been their modus operandi. All our strongholds, as if it's a rehearsed, well-rehearsed plan. All our strongholds, they will say that they don't have the pink sheet, which is not good enough. And the EC will say that I have it, and I am the one who can authenticate the pink sheet. And then they are holding everybody to ransom. Most unfortunate. Without that, we would have been done long ago. So we hope the EC will put its feet down. This is not the first time they are calling a result. They have to be firm and let's pronounce. I have won this election. However margin I have won. They know I have won. Another begging question is, if you have won election as they were alleging, if you claim you have won, why would you want to seek for an injunction and also call for a rerun of the election if you knew you have won? Nobody does that. Election that you have won already, why would you seek for it to be rerun? Because they know they've lost. Most unfortunate, but just to correct you, it is what they were brandishing about.
The injunction issue.
So-called injunction. It's not an injunction. It's an application they've made to a court. I think it's an ex parte application they've made to a court, seeking the court to grant or not. The court has not even determined the matter. So it cannot be called, in its true sense, it cannot be called as an injunction. It is not an injunction. And they were telling people that it's an injunction. That is a public deceit. You come and brandish a document and say that it's an injunction. Meanwhile, it is not an injunction, because we also have our sources, and we delved deeper and realized that it was a force. Why would they do that? Why would they show such disrespect to us? And they held everybody to ransom, claiming that they have an injunction that the bailiff had to serve. I stood there. The bailiff couldn't serve me. I stood there. And I even urged him to go ahead and do his job. He failed to do it. He couldn't even serve me.
Now, so what do you think is actually causing the delay now? Because we've been sitting here idle for roughly 3 to 4 hours.
We are told the IGP is supposed to give some directive, and as far as the EC. So that is, in its true sense, that's what we are waiting for.
Okay, so until we hear from the IGP, would still be here, converging here?
Yeah, so we are patient. However inconveniencing it is, it's most unfortunate, but we will be waiting for them. We'll be waiting for them for their directive so that we can finish. I think we have just about 40 to 45 pink sheets. They will be done, and the results will be called.
Yeah, and according to you, the 40 that we have more to go, you think you are even leading with the 40? With the
collated everything. Yeah. We are a responsible political party, so we got our carbon copies of pink sheet and we collated them. They destroyed some of them, but we got more than 90%. So we collated the results and we know who won, and it's nobody than me.
Frank Anodompre, and he is saying that he believes he has won in this the Nsawam Adwaji constituency. But just as you can see, an overview of the collation center right here at the Tesano Police Training School is that one of an idle one. I mean, everyone is quiet here, calm, awaiting on the IGP's directive on what is going to happen in this. In this collation center. Just as I said earlier, we have other constituencies that the results need to be collated. All the other tables that you see behind me are supposed to be collation tables where collation is supposed to continue, but then there's nothing happening here. We have members of the NDC also here and members of the NPP side also right here. Back to you in the studio, MFA.
So you'd confirm that the EC has not declared the Nsawam-Adrejuri constituency as won by the NPP, except that the NPP thinks that they have collated their numbers and they think that they're leading and so they've won. This is the confirmation. If you can hear me, Jackie, so because you just spoke to Frank Anodompre, I would like to find out that the EC has not really confirmed or declared the Nsawam-Adrejuri seats for the NPP, except that they, per their numbers, believe that they have won. And so that is still in dispute.
Yes, that's still in a dispute. Well, according to him, most of the political parties, they've already collated their results, and everyone is in belief that they are already leading. We haven't seen his results yet, but we are waiting on the EC to finally confirm which of these two political parties are leading in the Nsawam-Adrejuri constituency.
Thank you, Jackie. Now, you see that there's so much calm over there at the police training school here in Accra. Now, let's take you back to the morning and why the NDC chairperson or chairman was addressing. Prior to that was some sort of storm, just a little storm at the police training center. Let's take you back.
It's an emergency IPAC meeting. It must stop. This process must halt. Let's go for the IPAC meeting. Whatever comes out of it, we will come and continue.
You mean for all the other constituencies or just
in every process they are doing, and they must halt it. That's why there's an IPAC meeting. He can't continue with this process. He's aware. He just confirmed it. The director confirmed it that he has been instructed. The instruction is that they must halt. Why is he going to continue this one? He won't continue this one.
He said he's not aware.
He's saying he's not aware of it.
Which one? So he said the instruction that those who are going to start should not start, but he can continue. How can they give say instruction? It's an IPAC meeting. We go in Georgia over there. The NPP people are here. We are all going there. Let's go there and discuss it. We go and agree at IPAC that this is what we are going to do, then we continue.
What will you do if they go ahead?
How are they going to go ahead? When their bosses are giving instructions, they are saying they'll go ahead.
He's still saying that he wants to go.
We are saying there's an IPAC meeting. Let's go for the meeting.
Let's go for the meeting.
Tanko is here. Tanko is here. He is going to IPAC. There is a means whereby they communicate to us when there's going to be IPAC. I'm daring him to prove to us, to give us evidence that IPAC has been called. Ask him. Because normally when there's an IPAC meeting, they once sent us a message by text followed by a formal letter. Let him prove a text showing there's an IPAC meeting. Well, I don't believe it. Give us a proof that there's an IPAC meeting.
Ask the director here confirmed that instruction has been given to him.
Okay, unless I will go. We will go, madam.
You are lawyers. You are officer of the law, and you are defying the law because of your interest.
Show us the message right now. He's showing us the message from IPAC that he's talking about.
Hold on, I'm going to. No. We'll go. We are going to stand here.
We are still being asked to move forward.
What injunction? He says that have been said. Is the court injunction?
There's an injunction on this process.
But we are trying. Please, you are pushing the camera. Please take air. Right. Why are you pushing our camera? Why?
Media, move back, please. Media, move back, please.
Someone can pick it.
Well, that is the court's injunction that he's talking about. He's saying that this process needs to be halted. We are still being asked to move out of the arena, but he's still trying to show us the details. I wish I could move closer to see the details of it, but then let me try and get closer.
The law who has interest in the matter is trying to prevent us and ask that she wants it. Can't you see her? Can't you see what she's doing? Can't you see what she's doing?
You see
security for MPP. She's deployed here to protect MPP.
Now the military cannot prevent anybody from coming.
DC head office has been said.
Yes, they have been said.
What happens to the three that have been declared?
I'm saying that's arrested everything. No, nothing is going to continue here. The injunction is here.
But then the MPP is saying they haven't received any.
Stop it. They can't continue. The head office is safe. The minister has been safe, and they are aware.
They are all saying they haven't received anything yet.
They should talk to their bosses. The one who asked them to come and collect is the one who has been injuncted. If it is fake, tell me it's fake. Look at this. They have been served. Yes, they confirmed. They have received it.
They have been served.
They have been served.
Well, that is what I'm seeing here. According to him, they've all been served right here, and he is insisting that everybody, whatever thing that is going on, needs to be. JFK, I mean, what do you also have to say about this? You say that you've all received this notice.
No, you have been here this morning. If you recall, initially he came to tell us that we have been called for an IPAC meeting. Yeah. That's what he said, if you recall. And I threw a challenge to him that there is a process by which IPAC are called. One, they will send you a text message and follow up with an official letter. Okay. I asked him to show evidence that indeed IPAC has been called. He was unable to prove any evidence. Then, just after 30 minutes, he came back to tell us that an injunction has been placed on the process. So someone who came to earlier lie that there is an IPAC meeting when there was no IPAC meeting comes back to tell you that there is an injunction. How will you take him serious? How will you believe that what he's saying is the truth? If there is an injunction, as a lawyer, I know the processes. Where is the bailiff? Why is the bailiff? At the end, is he an officer of the court, or have the court asked him that he should go around dispatching rate to people? So if there's indeed an injunction, the officers here, they work under the Electoral Commission. Certainly they will be called that there is an injunction on the so hold. But we can't be taking a concocted injunction from NDC director of research.
Because how do you take news that the MPP, despite some flaws that have been identified, you still want to go with the
which flaws? Tell me.
Like some pink sheets that were not corresponding.
Which pink sheets were not corresponding?
There were one that the party agent had corresponding, but the EC's results were altered.
No, by the end of this, you must speak the truth. What happened was that, according to the NDC, they said the EC had made changes with respect to the number of ballot papers that were issued. So we asked them, does it affect the votes that the political parties had? They said no.
In the absence of the party agents?
No, by the end of the day, we are doing collation. So in the collation, there is a certain time that EC don't even have their principle, but rely on political parties.
Well, so if you missed it this morning, that was what happened this morning. And the NDC chairman, in a press conference a while ago, described the ongoing re-collation at the National Police Training School as an illegality. Let's listen.
We have decided to go slow on addressing the media so that we don't inflame passions and tensions that usually attend elections such as the one we've just gone through. But it seems to us that our silence is being taken advantage of by both the Electoral Commission and the New Patriotic Party to continue with the impunity they have been known for the past 8 years. The subject of today's presser has to do with what is happening at the police training school in Tesano. Some people call it Re-collation, some people call it collation, and so on. But whatever name you call rose, it will still smell sweet. And a decorated donkey still remains an ass. It cannot be turned into a horse. We in the NDC believe that what is happening at the police training school amounts to illegality. It is not founded on any laws of our elections. Neither is it based on any consensus that has been reached between the parties and the Electoral Commission. And so we want to inform the nation and to give notice to any officials of the commission and the police who are involved in the perpetration of that illegality to know that there could be consequences of their actions in future. We know the process of our elections is quite clear. After voting, votes are counted and the results entered on what we call the result declaration forms or the pink sheet, and the presiding officer at the polling station proceeds to announce the outcomes at the polling stations, after which all party agents sign and then are given copies of the results. The reason is that everybody will be having the same figures simultaneously. That is one of the most important checks in our elections. And that is why we always say that elections are won or lost at polling stations. Now, after what has been declared at the polling station, the law requires the presiding officer to paste a copy of the result declared at the polling station at the place where the election took place. And then, after all these declarations have been done at the various polling stations, then the parties, together with the Electoral Commission, will now meet at a constituency collation center, where the originals of the results declared at the polling station, which will be in the possession of the Electoral Commission, will be produced, and tallies are made out of that EC copies. But to check that EC itself will not play games, all the participating parties will have their collation agents at the collation center, and they will come there with copies of each of the polling station results, so that when the EC collation, constituency collation officer mentions a polling station by name and code and mention the figures, then all the parties that have copies of the pink sheets will now verify and check whether the figures on their copies of the pink sheet tally with what the Electoral Commission is mentioning. This provision is a check on the Electoral Commission officers so that they themselves cannot perpetrate fraud during the elections. Now, after we all agree on the figures as mentioned, because if everything is right, all the figures must tally, because the pink sheets are filled in quadruplicate, duplicate, quintuplicate, or whatever.
Well, the chairman of the NDC addressing the press immediately after that little mayhem at the Tesano Police Training School. Now, we have the party says that it has secured an injunction to halt the process. And joining us live on Zoom is Rashid Tanko Computer. He is the Deputy Director of Elections and IT at the NDC. First of all, thank you for joining us. But please clarify if indeed you have secured an injunction. If you can hear me, please unmute. Mr. Computer, if you can hear me, kindly unmute. We're trying to get Mr. Tanko Computer to clarify for us if indeed there was one, an IPAC meeting that was called, and also two, if they've secured an injunction, as many have argued that it is just an application for an injunction, and many have also argued that it is a real injunction. We're hoping that we're able to connect to him and that he will give us clarity on these two main issues. And what really are the issues concerning the parliamentary seats that have been declared in favor of the NPP? If Mr. Tanko can hear me. Unfortunately, I've lost Mr. Tanko. We'll try and reconnect with him so we have clarity on what has happened so far between yesterday and today. As of now, we're still looking to get clarity on Techiman South, Ahafwano, and also Obuasi constituencies as well. And as and when we have updates, we definitely will bring you. But stay with me. You're watching The Pulse. We'll be back shortly. Welcome back to The Pulse, and just gone by was the update on what's been happening at the Tessanot Police Training School, where there's been some sort of dispute on the declaration of some parliamentary seats earlier yesterday and also today. Now, we've got the party, NDC party says that, or they claim that they have secured an injunction to hold the process. Now, joining us Zoom is Mr. Rashid Tanko Computer, and he's the Deputy Director of Elections and IT at the NDC. First of all, thank you for joining us. And first thing we want to clarify, Mr. Computer, is that was there indeed an IPAC meeting that had been called? And also, if you've also, let's deal with that, and then we'll go on to the injunction that you said that you have secured.
Very well. Let me say good afternoon to your cherished viewers. And let me put it on record. We sent a letter asking the Electoral Commission to immediately call for an emergency IPAC meeting today. Because what is going on is not good for our democracy. They cannot just ambush Ghanaians by calling for re-collation and recounting all over the place. That is not the way to go. So we sent a letter requesting for an emergency IPAC meeting to Madam Jean Mensah, and they receive it. So we are waiting for their response for the emergency IPAC meeting, because normally when issues of this nature crops up, we need to see that IPAC and discuss it thoroughly and find a way out, but not to be ambushed. Then we'll just be sitting down there fighting constituencies to come to Accra for collation and recollation. That is not good enough for our democracy.
Has the AEC responded to this letter that you have sent?
Well, they are quiet as of now. On the heels of it that we were able to secure injunction to injunct the collation process of the Sawam Adwajiri constituency. And then based on that, I had discussion with Commissioner Tete, who told me they are coming out with a statement on the issues therein. Up to now, we haven't received the statement, so we are waiting for the statement.
And so when the NPP reacted that they didn't have any notice of any IPAC meeting, would they be correct if they say that they didn't have any notice?
Well, that was a different matter, because we have applied, and it's within the law that we can apply for a request for an emergency IPAC meeting. And when we did, we expect that the EC will inform them accordingly. That look, one of the major stakeholders have asked for an IPAC meeting, and so they would have informed them.
And so you're also confirming that you have secured an injunction. What type of injunction is this? Interlocutory?
Yes, we've gotten a ex-party motion. I mean, interlocutory injunction on ex-party to stop the process. We were able to serve the Electoral Commission, Madam Jean Mensah, at the head office. The bailiff came to the center to serve the other party, which is Anodompre. But the security, the police here prevented the bailiff from carrying out their lawful orders. And we've taken note of the behavior of the CID, who orchestrated everything. We are told she's the Director General of CID. In fact, we've taken notice of her behavior, her posture, and we didn't mince words. We told her in her face, if she wants to be the woman organizer of NPP, you should remove her uniform and go and join them. Simple and short. So
you were intended to serve one party, which is the incumbent MP, Anodompre, and then you also wanted to serve the EC, this injunction.
Yes, we did. We served the injunction on the EC at their headquarters. So they receive it. They have the injunction, all right. It is the other party who is jointly injuncted, which is Anodomfre, which the police, led by the CID, prevented the bailiff. In fact, the bailiff arrived there. They cordoned the place, wouldn't allow the bailiff to serve. When it became clear that they cannot do that, they rather escorted Anodomfre out of the premises here, where I'm just seated. The police did that here. We've taken notice of it. And we are not going to take kindly with the behavior of that CID officer.
And so, you know, you indicated that it is ex parte. So how many days have you been given to put the other parties on notice? Or because you have served it against them?
That is the court. We'll go to court. We have put them on. We'll put them on notice when we appear before court. For now, the court has injuncted the process. It's ex parte, and they cannot proceed. That is why we stopped the process. They cannot proceed.
And so what we have currently is an application for an injunction. Maybe at some point you want to share with us a copy of the true injunction that has been served.
Well, when you talk of application, you apply and the registrar accepts the application. A thing unknown to an injunction haven't been served. The EC has been applying this principle for time immemorial. This is not the first time. They should stop schooling us on matters they are aware of.
Okay.
When Afenyo went to Supreme Court and applied for that injunction, did the people, how did they call them? The Lord laws, did they give her the injunction when he was banding it around in court and in Parliament and telling them that we have secured an injunction, What was it for?
Did you file an ex parte application?
For a process. This is a process. When you apply for it, it means that it arrests everything that is ongoing until it is determined.
At what point in the law, if you want to reference me, because if you file an application, especially if it is ex parte, I don't recall the law that allows the registrar, once it's been registered, to assume that that has been granted. If you can school me a bit on that.
That is the process. When you apply, it is like to the court, especially a high court, and then the processes goes through, and it is satisfied by the registrar of the High Court. It is assumed that an application has been put in place, and this one is on ex parte. That's how we did it. It's ex parte, and the other party were not in court to argue their matter, so it's ex parte. That's how it's granted, and that's why we have served them. They are aware. This is not the first time. I'm saying that the EC has been applying these processes for time immemorial. Anytime there's an application served on them, they stop the process. They've done that to us severally. This is not the first time.
All right. We shall be following to see how this injunction will pan out. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Rashid Tanko Computer. We'll go for a quick break. The Pulse returns. Welcome back to The Pulse, and moving away from the politics and elections, let's talk about energy. Something that you and I would love to learn. Now, this afternoon, we spotlighted the nation's energy sector, exposing its true state just weeks before the new president takes office. As you're already aware, the energy sector has constantly been a centerpiece of political campaigns, including the recently concluded 2024 elections. But beyond the politics, what's the true state of Ghana's energy sector today? As we speak, 7 generating plants are down due to various factors, including WAPCO shutdown. So what kind of energy landscape is the incoming NDC administration set to inherit? What are the expectations of key stakeholders and consumers alike? Here on The Pulse, we want to gauge the true picture of the sector and get you all the answers. Let's begin with my colleague here, Isaac Kofi Ajay, who's going to just hit the ground running with all the data and the numbers. And then we've got the very fine gentleman joining me in studio, and also one person on Zoom, and I shall introduce them a bit later. But Kofi, what really are the numbers looking like, and what are the promises? Especially we'll focus on the NDC before we go to our guest.
I mean, yesterday we were heavy on the economy, but one bedrock of the economy is the energy, especially looking at the government currently, which is going to form a new administration, really focusing on the 24-hour economy. And we have said that you cannot run a 24-hour economy without energy. Now, if you look, at the MPP and NDC, their campaign promises, we were able to count about 32 promises for the MPP and 31 promises for the NDC. But at the moment, the blue side is almost immaterial because we voted the green guys to power, they will be forming government very soon. So let's look at their, energy promises. This includes the upstream and downstream, but definitely we are looking at the power generation aspects of the energy, this afternoon. So let's focus on this number on the screen, this big 15. Why is this important? Because we have a medium-term arrangement with the IMF where there are 15 energy sector arrangements that we are supposed to finish between 2023 and 2027. So anybody coming to power, you have a pact with the IMF that you need to go through. And we understand that the current, the president-elect says he is going to renegotiate the IMF program. The IMF says that it is welcome, but it must go according to the laid down rules, set. The first one in the IMF program, there are 15, but we are going to focus on 6. Definitely, we are not going to, the first one will be on the cash waterfall mechanism because that has been the key problem. Energy, revenue generation is the main thing. Why? Because ECG almost operates or they do their generation in dollars and their collection is always in cedis. So there's always that shortfall in their revenue. We'll come to that very, soon. Another one has to do with procurement of new IPPs. IMF says that anytime you are bringing on board new IPPs, there are certain laid down rules and regulations that you need to follow so that we not fall into the pit that we found ourselves with the PPAs that we underwent some time ago. The third one has to do with tariff adjustment. We know that going forward, it should be automatic. Are Ghanaians really happy? The NDC administration or John Dramani Mahama is coming to inherit an automatic adjustment of tariff. How is it going to be under his tenure? And the fourth one has to do with the take or pay, definitely in the same bed with the IPPs and the PPA arrangement. Fifth one, let's go to that one as well. That has to do with the GMPC, gas supply issues. Why is this important? If you look at the current energy mix, it's one that is about 60% thermal. It means that fuel is very important when you're discussing the stability of the country's energy situation. Now, for me, the NDC actually makes about a number of 31 on energy, but on power generation or power, we're able to isolate about their top 6 promises. Definitely will not be talking about oil, but one that we'll be talking about will be the universal street. Why is this important? Because they want to run a 24-hour economy. If you want to run an economy that exists during the day, during the nights, you need street lights to be on. Definitely one key reasons why we need to focus on that. And also gaining or having access to what we call the universal access to electricity by 2025. That is the target of the NDC. How are they going to do that? Are they going to rely on what they call the mini hydros that they are going to build across the length and breadth of the country? It is important to engage our guests on how they are going to do that. Then there's also going to be stability to expand. That's what I was talking about, the mini hydros that the NDC also want to bring on board. And key focus on renewables, because we all know how thermal energy at the moment is really affecting. Now let me rush through this and come to this aspect, because this is where the problem is, which is the energy sector shortfalls. I mean, why is this important? This is the reason why we have the huge legacy debt, which is now about $1.3 billion. This is according to the World Bank. If you look at the what we call the energy sector shortfall right from 2022 to 2027, this is the estimation. If you use what we call the business as usual, if we are not implementing the current ESRP, what is the situation in terms of the shortfall? If you are talking about energy sector shortfall, it definitely means that what ECG or the power players actually collect versus what they generate, the cost and revenue doesn't balance. So every time, it's either government or a player must come in to come and clear the difference. This is what results to the energy sector shortfall. This is our problem going forward into 2025 and 2026. For me, 2025 cumulatively will be around $4.9 billion. This is huge. 2026, $6.6 billion. And if you look at it on cumulative terms, 2027 will be hovering around $8.2 billion. So John Dramani Mahama is coming to office, and he's going to be faced with this business as usual energy sector shortfall. How is he going to solve that? How is he going to make the players very efficient for us not to have these shortfalls? But for me, this is also important. If you look at the installed capacity versus dependable capacity over the period from 2016, he left office with both dependable and installed capacity all below, let's say around 4,000, megawatts. He's coming to office.
On the dependable and installed capacity.
I mean, if you look at the installed capacity, that's what we have at the moment. I mean, if you combine the hydros, all the energy mix, I mean, the hydro, the thermals and everything, what is the power that's available to us if we want to generate? And the dependable one is when we are about to generate. What are the ones that we can readily get? If you consider all other factors, I mean, fuel and other things. But over the years, we've seen that we've not really grown in terms of moving to a higher terms. We're still hovering around, 5,000 megawatts somewhere as of 2023. But if you look into the Energy Commission's projection for 2024, we are supposed to drop for both dependable and installed capacity all below, max around 5,000 megawatts. Now, yesterday,
what are you doing to drop that?
I mean, it's definitely because of the fuel issues and because you have the energy sector that about 60% is thermal. So that tells you that going into, if you're looking at your dependable, at what time do you have the fuels available? At what time are you able to produce? Very important to consider that. But this is the great statistics that we got yesterday, and it painted a scary picture for consumers. Why? Because we know that at peak hours, we should be consuming about 3,788 megawatts. Yesterday, what we're learning was that the available power, I mean, this as a result of the 7 plants that were not producing yesterday or not generating yesterday, that gave us available power of 2,659 megawatts. That left us a different load, a load that has to be shared. It was more than 1,000 megawatts yesterday. So if you experienced light out yesterday, it was because, look, ECG and Gridco had to share over 1,000 megawatts yesterday. Definitely that tells you that yesterday we were producing 30% below the peak demand as a result of 7 plants going off stream yesterday. So this is the current situation. I mean, we'll be bringing you more details, but if you are wondering why you experienced doomsday yesterday, it's definitely because, I mean, WAPCO is doing some maintenance, and definitely there are other factors that caused us to shed about 1,129 megawatts of power.
Kofi, you're amazing. Thank you so much. It'll be a good time to bring the men that speak energy fluently. Now, joining us in studio is Nana Mwesi VII, and he's Executive Director of at the Institute of Energy Security. Also in studio is Duncan Amwa, the Executive Director of COPEC. Also in studio is Justice Yauche, also from the African Center for Energy Policy, ACEP. And also I'd like to go on Zoom and introduce Mr. Gabriel Kumi. He is the Deputy President for the LPG Marketers Association, who would also join us at some point. And then all these gentlemen are no new faces here on Joy News Channel. Thank you, gentlemen, for allowing us to want to speak to you. I'm quite curious, especially it's day 2 of the Joint Transition Team, and they've been engaging and engaging. And one of the things that they have mentioned is, and many people have mentioned, is that if John Mahama is going to be implementing 24-hour economy, he has to look at the energy sector. I go to Nana Mwesi and then ask that. You have always mentioned the overall situation about energy. Currently and today, it's just a few weeks for the president-elect to be inaugurated, and then he will start to work. What is the current situation, and honestly, and how would you analyze it?
Well, good evening to your viewers. Most of the time I want to bring good news, but unfortunately, if you're going to ask me about energy and what we have and what the president-elect will inherit, I will tell you frankly that we have a fragile energy system. Particularly with the power subsector, because it is prone to instability, outages, and all that. And this, this fragile nature stems from systemic and operational inefficiency. We have a very high technical and commercial losses. Even though we have high installed capacity utilization is very low because of the financial constraints on the key sector players. Also, the cash waterfall system that is supposed to ensure equitable and fair distribution of the revenue generated is not being adhered to. And we get scary picture from the PRC that in some month, the ECG, the major distributor, is able to collect even half of the expected revenue. it means that always and every month on month, we are generating debt in the sector. And that's a picture your good friend painted on the board. And so if you have a very, if you have a system that is constrained by financial challenges, then of course you are unable to retool your system. You are unable to upgrade your distribution system, your transmission system. You are unable to even maintain the power generators themselves. Today we have a very high technical and commercial losses. I mentioned that. The systems are weak, and we must invest in the technical, in the distribution and the transmission grid. Other than that, you may give to the ECG 1,000 megawatts, and they can account for just roughly about 700 megawatts. The 300 is lost. Who pays for that? It will come to a point when tariffs have to be increased because it must reflect the cost of generation, transmission, and distribution, so we don't incur additional, debt in the sector. And so we have a very fragile power system,
right?
And we cannot assure ourselves that come next 6 months, we'll have stability in power supply. For us, we are projected already that whoever formed the next government will have to bear with doing so for over a year.
No matter what?
No matter what.
Okay. Well, it'll be a good time to go to Yao. So, Kojo, sorry, you've heard him say that we have a very fragile system. And so, Kojo, I mean, since I was a child, I have always known that we have had power challenges in this country. I don't know, from the time that we migrated from diesel powering our generation, at what point really did we see the cracks? And at what point do you think that we've not been able to mitigate it? Because then I have to start thinking of generator, as Nana is mentioning, no matter what, whether it was the NDC or whether it was the NPP, we're likely to have experienced doom so in the coming 1 year. At what point did we drop the ball?
Thank you very much. I think, like Nana mentioned, and you rightly stated, we've always had power challenges. There have been episodes in our history where it was even dire, right? We have the Doomsor crisis. You can give a timetable to it. But what we have failed to do was, over time, put in measures that stops the problem from growing bigger. Like you have a saw, instead of you to fix the saw, you allow it to fester, and then it gangrenes until a point that they have to amputate some part of your body. That is where we are, and that is the situation that Nana rightly described. So we have a system where around 2014, we did an assessment of our power sector, and we said ECG, the distribution end, is the weakest link, and we needed about $500 million to inject into the system to retool the system. And that led to the conversation about where are we going to get that money. Obviously, government doesn't have the fiscal space to do that. So we mooted the idea of some form of private sector participation for the financial and operational turnaround of the company. And that was supposed to reduce, then we were having losses around 18%, to as low as somewhere around 12% over 5 years. Because whoever comes in is supposed to inject about $100 million every year to retool the infrastructure and bring down the losses. Then we dropped the ball when the process came. We were supposed to get a concessionaire, and we are all familiar with the fraudulent spectacle that besieged that process. And from there, things have gone bad and worse, that now we are having losses hovering around 35%. Right? So it shows you that the problem is there, but if you don't do the things that you have to do to fix the problem, it can only get worse. And the worse it gets, the bad it is for the economy. As we speak now, every year, we are spending about $1.5 billion from the budget to be able to prop up the inefficiencies in the power sector, to pay for the under-recoveries. And it is taking money away from social spending, from providing roads for you and I, portable water, clinics. How much did we say we want to spend on Agenda 111 again? right? And there is only one sector of the economy that is sucking this much from the budget. That is the situation that the president-elect is facing now.
Right.
And he has to now give us a clear indication that I want to fix the problem so that 4 years later, we will not come and sit here in another transition conversation and say, now losses have moved from 35% to maybe...
Not higher.
much higher.
Right, let me come to Duncan, especially with your expertise in petroleum. And we cannot talk about energy without highlighting petroleum. And I've never seen, again, petroleum, if it's even going to go down at any point, it never really goes down significantly. He mentioned retooling, and I like to think that petroleum will play a key role in that value chain if we want to retool. Would petrol ever go to the point where it will be so low that we're able to use it as part of the retooling? Will it ever? I want some comfort messages this afternoon.
Well, I could give you some comfort messages, particularly on power. We had sessions with the two manifestos, the NPP, the NDC. I must say that the NDC manifesto was largely reflective because a lot of consultations were done, particularly with institutions within the energy space. And so the views that we could espouse here, a lot of them we had shared with people who came around asking questions. I experienced Dumso last night. It wasn't funny. And I'm not sure Ghanaians are looking for Dumso to prolong. We need to see an end to it. One of the things that I'm sure the next government to be sworn in 7th of January could do better is to ensure that the two challenges that is currently confronting the power sector is dealt with head on. One is the fuel source for the power plants, and then two, also to pay for the plants. I mean, whatever monies that we owe the IPPs. I am confident that the next government, if indeed decides to do the very things that we have suggested to it, will be able to get Ghana out of the cyclical power, problems. One, for the fuel issue, you would need dedicated funding source to provide fuel for the IPPs. If they wake up and gas is not a challenge, light crude oil is not a challenge, the combined plants could have either of both. And there's dedicated funding for it. You could always plan ahead if the West African Power Pool or the Nigerian, gas supplier would have to undergo some maintenance, and so we cannot even have gas coming from the Eastern Corridor. What you do is to plan to import once you have the money. And so one of the things that I'm sure the next government will do better, per discussions we had with them behind closed doors, is to have dedicated funding source for fuel. If you have IPPs that have their plants up and running, and you even owe them, at least the fuel money would also not be something they need to contract bank loans and be paying interest for. Not too long ago, in the petroleum downstream, we've had to input a line item that now pays for the security services, the police, the military, and then the ambulance services, those that are essential, that we need to provide fuel for them. Before then, the government was the one supposed to pay for all the fuel they consume. Now, through some suggestions and some ingenuity of players, we've been able to fix that problem. So now what the police consume wouldn't have to sit on the books of an OMC because government hasn't paid, and then you collapse the OMC. We are looking at a similar model for the power sector where you have dedicated funding. Ghanaians have been paying COVID levy for God knows how long. We don't have COVID. We don't have, things falling out from COVID that will still need to be catered for. But we are paying for COVID. Whatever the monies are being used for some of us, it makes no sense whatsoever, but we are still paying for it. If you came and said that you could divert the COVID money to give us, fuel for the power plants, such that anytime I go home, I'm going to have electricity, maybe I'll sleep a bit easier.
Unfortunately, he's promised to scrap it, so we're unable to.
Yes, so he could scrap COVID levy, but have a little line item that gives you something to be able to buy the fuel for the IPPs, such that the IPPs are not burdened any further. With the fuel thing, they now have to go and borrow from the banks and then generate the power, and then when they send you their invoices, it takes you months. Then the bank interest would be accumulating. Once you take care of the fuel for the IPPs, 50-60% of their problems, you are done with it.
Solved,
Then whatever ECG is able to mobilize by way of collections from you and I, we could ring fence, do the cash waterfall mechanism properly, and ensure that those we owe, there's a payment plan based on inflows coming in from ECG. That way you could be managing a sector sustainably. But this current situation where everything goes through a certain loop, ECG would decide to do all the corruption they want to do. Haptel, from you had a power app, you decided you don't want it. You want to go buy another app called Haptel and pay millions of cedis. Then you tell the IPs you don't have money. These things, I'm sure, will be a thing of the past. And so the next government would have a huge challenge. If it goes to sleep on the power situation, I can promise on this show that the next government will not last 3 months. If after 7th January, handing over is done, 8th January, Dumso comes, 10th Dumso comes, February Dumso comes, within 3 months, the overwhelming goodwill that Ghanaians seem to have given the NDC or the incoming government would have been eroded, because they've seen Dumso in the past with them. But there's a way out. And so we are not proposing solutions that would necessarily have to take the eye out of space. Find a dedicated source. If it is 2 pesos on fuel, it's okay. If it is 1% for what I pay at the port, I know that I'm paying something to keep the lights on. I'm sure Ghanaians will go with them. But if they would also want to go through the same ECG fixing and say that we need to fix ECG to be able to take care of all the problems, they may not be able to get us out of the wood. So
I will go to Zoom, and when I come back, Nana Moesi, what I want you to do is help me explain to my niece what the role of deregulation policy can play for this new government, if they can utilize it in any way. And again, you want to explain better what the cash waterfall mechanism really is, and if it's just a term we've heard them throw about as well. Then when I come to you, you also explain to me what you mean by the retooling. I want that on the value chain, when we are retooling, who can we trust and who can we trust? Because then you can retool in any way at all. But if on the chain one person fails at their work, then it looks like the whole chain now collapses again. But let me go on Zoom and talk to Mr. Gabriel Kumi, who is the deputy chairman or deputy president for the LPG Marketers Association. Earlier this year and in between the year, the LPG Marketers Association and the NPA have been at each other's neck. And I know that you were also applauding what Duncan was saying, but currently, what is the state of the LPG market for you guys, and what really are some of the policies that you think that the NPA can carry through to the next or the current government that's coming?
Thank you very much, MFA. Let me make a few comments on what my brothers in the studio have said before I proceed to LPG, which is my special area. I will be very, very surprised if President Mahama allowed Dumso to even persist for even 1 week when he takes over. Why am I saying that? Because this is a person who was accused of bringing Dumso on Ghanaians for 4 years. In fact, his main political opponents used that as their main campaign tool against him. President Mahama has a 4-year mandate. And after 4 years, he's not coming back to the seat again. I want to see his 4 years as years to correct all the wrongs, if you may, the wrong things that he did in his first 4 years. And like I said, Dumso was a major factor. In fact, if you look at it, Dumso was one of the main reasons. If you are looking at the factors that contributed to his downfall in 2016, I will give Dumso about 60-70%. So the same person given a second opportunity, I don't think you want Dumso to be visited on Ghanaians. I'm of the strong conviction that whatever His Excellency President Mahama will have to do to ensure that Ghanaians do not go through Dumso, he's going to do it. Because he has a legacy opportunity, an opportunity to leave a legacy. And I'm sure he wouldn't want to go out as somebody who brought back Dumso after he has been kicked out of office in 2016 as a result of Dumso. Having said that, let me go on to LPG. LPG consumption in Ghana has not been as it should. And this is mainly because of the fact that the price of the product has risen to the height that the ordinary consumer is no longer able to afford. I expect the current government to take very concrete and serious measures to bring the price of LPG down. And one of the first things we expect government to do is to take off all taxes on LPG. It does not make sense to continue keeping taxes on the LPG. If you look at a country like La Côte d'Ivoire is doing about twice, in terms of consumption, La Côte d'Ivoire is doing twice what Ghana is doing. This is because La Côte d'Ivoire has taken very concrete measures to ensure that they keep the price of LPG down. Indeed, La Côte d'Ivoire continue, as we speak, to subsidize LPG. In Ghana, we used to subsidize LPG. We went full cost recovery, and we have heaped about 18% taxes on the product. We expect government to take serious and concrete measures to take all taxes from LPG. Otherwise, our target that we've set to increase penetration of LPG to 30% to 50% by the year 2030 can never be achieved. Another issue that I want us to look at on the LPG front is the cylinder recirculation model. It is clear at this point that the way and manner the previous government has handled the policy is wrong, because for 7 solid years we have made attempts to implement the policy, but I don't think it has seen any success yet. I expect the incoming government to take a second look at the way and manner the policy has been implemented over the years. We have never said that we don't want the policy implemented. That's not what we have said. But what we have been consistently and persistently against is the way and manner it has been done over the years. We have consistently told the regulator and the ministry that the way and manner is being done is not the way to go. If you don't hand the policy to the industry players, to the guys who have done this for the past 20, 30, 40 years, there is no way your policy can succeed. Okay. So we expect government to take a second look at it. If at the end of the day, it becomes conclusive that the policy cannot work in Ghana, we can throw it away and look at consolidating and look at fine-tuning and making sure the current system that we have is improved upon so that it works.
Okay.
It's not all the time that you have to go and copy from somewhere. We can have, this is Kwame Nkrumah Ghana, this is J. Kufuor Ghana. Okay. We can have a system called the Ghana system and perfect it for others to come and learn from. Okay. So cylinder recirculation has to be taken. We have spent so much money on cylinder recirculation. If I'm to put out from our sources the amount of money Ghana has spent on cylinder recirculation, you will be shocked.
I'm certain it will be a conversation for another time when I get you in studio. So we look at that policy carefully and what the LPG Marketers Association are also recommending for the next government. But thank you for joining us on Zoom. This conversation we shall continue back into the studio. So I wanted Nana to take us through the deregulation policy as to whether it's a policy that can help in any way the current government and the cash waterfall mechanism. I've just heard it and I've heard it. I understand that it's some sort of a pool that we can rake in income. Is it just a term, or is something we can really implement?
All right. Well, before I touch on that, I want to say that we need to have a stakeholder conversation on the cylinder recirculation model.
Right.
We must have a national dialogue on this model to ensure that we have a right balance in the supply of LPG in Ghana so as to grow consumption. And we must not put public fund to private players who are part of the cylinder recirculation model. We must have a conversation on that.
Okay.
Again, I want to also add my voice to the idea that we must have a separate fund to clear the legacy debts in the power sector. ESLA, which was introduced in 2016 January, or implemented from 2016 January, has been misapplied and been collateralized. And so today, we are not getting any dedicated source of fund to clear the legacy debts. Of today, we can talk about almost $3 billion. We must have a dedicated fund for that source of fund. And we must even take away the COVID levy and replace it with that. So be it, because if we don't correct and address the financial constraints in the sector, doomsday will be there today and will be there tomorrow. That's what to say. But talk of deregulation in the power sector, I'm sure that's what we're talking about.
Yes.
It's largely deregulated. When it comes to deregulation of the power sector, you want to ensure that the various value chain are separated from each other. It used to be that we had a VRA managing, generating power and also transmitting power to the ECG. And so at a point we introduced GRIDCO to handle the transmission of the power. That's another form of deregulation, so that we can see or benefit from efficiency. Okay. At a point, we also had to introduce private sector players in the power sector generation.
Right.
That's also another form of deregulation, because if you privatize some aspect of it, you are also trying to bring in not just efficiency, but also injection of capital. And so you can relax public fund, divert it to other areas as well. But then I think we come to a point where we all know that the elephant in the room is the ECG, the distribution segment.
I would trust you, gentlemen. All three of you are on the same page that the elephant in the room is ECG.
Yeah.
All three of you will agree to that.
Yeah.
Not ECG per se, but the mismanagement.
That is in the power sector.
Yes,
in the
mismanagement of ECG.
We're talking about financial constraints. In the value chain, somebody supplies fuel to the plant.
Yes.
True.
Somebody generates the power.
Yes.
Another transmits. Okay? Then the last in the chain is the distributor. That brings to our offices and our homes the power and collects the cash at the tail end of the value chain.
Critical.
So that every player in the chain will be paid as per his contribution.
Right.
So if the ECG is unable to collect its cash, it means that all these players will suffer and all these legs will not function effectively. So the elephant in the room is the ECG. They are struggling with cash collection. We may have to privatize segments of their work.
Which would be the cash collection.
We could be the cash collection. We could be, which also hovers around the metering and all that. Look, come to me tomorrow. I will take you to 2 meters, prepaid meters that have been functioning all the way through without buying 1 cedi of credit, but it's been working for 10 months consistently. Prepaid meters. It exists in a lot of areas. I'll take you to 2 points.
Okay.
It may surprise you. And so if they are being ineffective, let's give it to somebody. And I'm sure that's why we sought to even bring in PDS. And we frustrated all this thing. And so if you talk about...
frustrated, or it's just that the PDS was also just another entity that was not up to the task?
Let me help you. So we find antidotes to our problems. We find solutions. Then we materialize the solution. Then we corrupt the solution. So it's not like PDS could not have solved ECG issues. It was a good thing. But then we decided, so where do we have opportunities? Then the rent seekers, political rent seekers, the moment they get involved, then you know that they are going in for the cure. So the solutions exist, the blue or the green books would exist. If you talk to the civil society actors, you would come across a lot of, solutions that we have proposed. But the moment they realize that the solution has some business possibility or prospect, some money to be made in there,
we become human as usual.
We become human, and then
permit me. I want to come back to you when you wrap on the cash waterfall mechanism. But Yache, please, the retool. I've heard it again and again and again. In this retooling, what Nana has said, what Duncan has said, would it find its way in the retooling as well?
Yeah, it's both infrastructure and systems and operations. We're talking about the fuel issue, for example. The financial problem that we have in this space is one of debts that had accrued that we have to pay, and debt that continues to accumulate, right? And Nana has, using his fingers, shown you how the value chain is supposed to work. Someone generates the power, another transmits, another sells. And in the price that the distributor sells, there is a component of all the costs that have been incurred in generating that 1 unit of the power that is being sold. There is also the cost for investment in the value chain. So there is the transmission investment cost embedded in that tariff. There is the distribution investment cost embedded in that tariff. So if we are having a conversation and we ignore the point of failure, almost like a single point of failure, which we all agree is the distribution and currently managed by the ECG, where the debt accumulation happens, we can always, through some means like we've been doing, find some way to clear the legacy debt. But within 6 months, we'll come back to another accumulation of the debt. That is why we have always maintained the position that ECG is not being run as a commercial entity. The decisions around how the business should run has been hijacked by political interest. And Duncan shared rather clearly how political interests find themselves ways to insert themselves. Take, for example, this revenue collection problem that we've been battling with.
Yes.
ECG has its own internal capacity to build an app that we all pay our
but they chose to
bills.
outsource.
They chose to go and get somebody else to come and do the same thing at outrageous sums at the blind side of even the regulator that is supposed to approve costs. So you see, some of these decisions are what leads to the problem that we have. So the retooling, the infrastructure side is there, but the systems and operations side also needs to be done.
Right.
Then we come to the infrastructure.
Right.
Then the transmission infrastructure as well, we need to get there.
Right. Guess what? I have to do a part 2 of this conversation.
Sure.
I really need to have and I agree to that roundtable discussion. And so I may have to end my conversation here, but I promise to do a part 2 of this. Thank you. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining me today. We go for a quick break. We come back with the final leg of the show. Please stay. Welcome back to The Pulse. Now, the International Council of Nurses made headlines quite recently, raising concerns over the mass migration of nurses from poorer countries like Ghana to wealthier nations. Despite global recruitment bans, over 1,200 nurses left Ghana last year, a trend the ICN warns could harm the healthcare system in these vulnerable countries. Now today on The Pulse, we are joined via Zoom Mr. Howard Cotton, the CEO of International Council of Nurses, and we'll discuss the ethical implications of this recruitment and what needs to be done to address it. Thank you so much for joining us today on The Pulse. Mr. Howard.
Good afternoon. Very good to be with you.
Well, so I know that you've already been working with the International Council for Nurses even before you rose to becoming the CEO. How has it been generally?
It's been a phenomenal period for nurses right the way around the world. Nurses were thrown into the spotlight during the pandemic. I think people saw the reality of modern day nursing. They saw not only the care and compassion of nurses, that they saw the courage, the leadership, the technical skills that are required. As we look around the world at the health challenges we face, from the rise of non-communicable diseases, ageing populations, infectious diseases, demand for healthcare is growing and accelerating, and that means that we need to invest even more in our nurses and our health workforce. And I think we're slow. I think we're slow on that front, and I think that we're not pursuing some of the solutions that we need. And international migration is an example of a quick fix, short-term attempt to address shortages, but doesn't really go to the root cause of what we need to do to invest in nurses and health workers.
Well, perfect. You have just hit the nail right on the head that the demand for healthcare is a global challenge. And definitely the wealthier countries are definitely going to give very juicy and better offers to nurses in countries like my country, Ghana here. And for the council, the International Council of Nurses, is there any policy, is there anything that you have been doing so far to at least curb this situation?
So we work with the World Health Organization. There is a global code of practice that sets out to govern and give ethical guidelines in relation to recruitment practices. But we don't think that that is strong enough. We don't think it's being as effective as it needs to be. Ghana is on what's known as a red list, a safeguarding list, whereby there shouldn't be active recruitment from Ghana. If the Ghanaian government wants to do an agreement with another government, a government-to-government agreement, that's allowed, that's permissible, but there shouldn't be targeted active recruitment because Ghana's health system, you have fewer nurses and doctors per head of population than many other countries. The coverage of healthcare is in the lower quartile globally. So it's about trying to protect the health system within Ghana. But when these deals are being done, bottom line for me, I don't think that Ghana is getting a good enough deal for the nurses that it's losing.
Mr. Carlton, before I let you go today on The Pulse, is there any form of recompensation for countries such as Ghana, especially for this high level of brain drain? Any form of recompensation?
Well, this is what should be at the heart of these government-to-government agreements. They talk about there being mutual benefit. That, for me, means that there needs to be compensation for the nurses, the valuable nurses that are lost from Ghana. We don't know what that level of compensation is. The agreements are not transparent. Just to give you an idea, that in the UK it costs about $50,000 a year to educate a nurse. So if the UK is recruiting from Ghana, for every nurse, arguably it's saving £50,000. We think that there should be some of that as compensation to places like Ghana, but that should then be invested into Ghanaian nursing and the Ghanaian healthcare system. And that's what we're arguing for: greater transparency, stronger agreements, and clear identification of the resources, the compensation that should come back to countries like Ghana.
Thank you so much, Mr. Howard Cotton, for talking to us today. Many thanks for watching The Pulse with me, Emefa Akosi-Adeti. There's so much more news when you log on to myjoyonline.com. Many thanks for watching The Pulse today. For more news, log on to myjoyonline.com.